I have a small thought for you today. How much are you worth? When people say that, they often think of how much you own. You have a big house, a big car, a boat, big property, so you're worth $1 million. But yeah, that's interesting. That's what people think. Now, I was thinking at home, I get called a marshmallow sometimes. And I was wondering, if we were made of marshmallow, how much would we be worth? So I worked it out. If you weighed 80 kilos, you'd cost $480 in marshmallow. And we learnt this morning that Easter's not about chocolate and food, but I saw the biggest Easter egg I've seen the other day, and it happened to be in our house. I bought it. It's here, Darrell Lee milk chocolate. If we were turned into an Easter egg, our weight, $80, just find it here, we'd cost $2,667.20 if we were turned into a big Easter egg of 80 kilos. So that's a very big Easter egg. And then if we were a solid gold statue of 80 kilograms, as of yesterday, we would be worth $4,080,000. Yeah. So that's a lot of gold. So, what do people see you as? What does God see you as? How much are you worth to God? Well, God sees you as priceless. In Luke chapter 12, if you could all turn there, please. It says in Luke chapter 12, verse 6, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows." Now, sparrows are small little birds, and God cares for them very much, and He loves them because He made them. And we are so much bigger than sparrows, and He loves us so much more than sparrows. And what are we worth to God? Well, He paid the price for us, because we are priceless, but He paid the price. He sent His only Son to die for us. And that's what we usually focus on at Easter. But this Easter, when you see an Easter egg, usually you think about eating it, but I want you to think about, before you eat it, how much is it worth to you, and how much are you worth to God?
Thank you, Callan. That was a good introduction to value. How much are you worth, and what is your value? You know, I was in a antique shop yesterday just waiting for some food to come my way. All this bits of junk lying around. They all had prices on it. You go, who'd pay for that? But for someone, it's valuable. Not because of what it is necessarily, but because of how they might relate to it. They might have seen it come out of their grandparents' house or home. Maybe it reminds them of their own past. To them, it becomes valuable. You know, what is value? I've got a little rolling pin here. What do you reckon that's worth? $2? Not much. You know, it's actually priceless because I wouldn't sell it. I made this amongst some others. It's the only one left that I know of that's around, that I made myself. I'm no great handyman really, but I enjoyed making it out of just a hunk of timber, and it was great fun, and it's a tool you can use. Not only did I make it, but I made it a long time ago. I've forgotten when now, probably 35 years ago. And together with that, I made a chopping board. Again, it's probably not worth that much, because it sort of fell apart a little bit the other night. Had to put it back together. But to me, it's actually priceless because it brings me back memories of my Pathfinder days. Who has been in Pathfinders, by the way? Who has not ever been in Pathfinders? Only a few. Well, I'm sorry you missed out on the experience, but you can always be a leader and get the experience. But that brings me back memories of Pathfinders back again a few decades ago. And even though it's never really been used to cut veggies or whatever on, it brings back memories, and to me, it's of value. Just leave it on there in case I need to use it. Even though it's not for sale, it carries value. Some time ago, in fact it would have been 1970, there was a artist from Mexico. I've never heard of the guy, but you who are very artistic and well educated would have heard of Rafini Tomeo. He was a long-living artist from Mexico. He was actually one of the top of his field, and he's painted many paintings, and in his older years he painted a painting which had been sold at auction. Actually, no, it wasn't an auction, it was actually sold, and these people put it up in their home. They moved house, packed it up carefully, and when they went to their new house, the painting wasn't there. It had vanished. They don't really know how, but it wasn't there. So that was 1970. Fast forward down through to about 1990. There was a lady named Elizabeth Gibson. She was in New York, living in New York. She was just strolling down the street, as they do in New York, and noticed a heap of junk on the side of the road. To her it was trash, but junk is what I'd call it. And this bit of artwork was half rolled out a bit, and she thought, that's someone's artwork, I think I should rescue that. So she pulled it out and strung it up in her own home and thought it was a bit weird, but it's artwork, someone's put some effort in, I'll look after that. And so she put it up. And that's what she put up. You look at that and go, yeah, what do you see in there? I see purple and red. What else do you see? Ned Kelly. I can see Ned Kelly there. But she didn't think much of it, and her visitors would come and go, and they'd look at it and walk on by as well. But she looked at it and she thought, maybe this does belong to someone. Let me check it out. And in the corner off the photo was a signature. And she thought, must be someone if it's been signed. So she went hunting through the Google's stuff. She actually happened to chance upon a TV show where they had stolen art. And she thought, maybe this is some stolen art. Let me look at this TV show. And she thought, yeah, I reckon this might be it. So she rang up some guy that worked for, it wasn't Sotheby's, but it was these people at the TV show. And she said, can I have a chat with you? Oh, what about? I just want to have a chat. She wouldn't let on what she was going to chat about. But when she met the guy, she told him what she had, and he was excited. And he said, well, can I get your name and your details? I need to come visit you. She says, no. She says, I'll be back here tomorrow if you want to talk to me more. And the guy said, but I need to know who you are. And she said, sorry, I'll be back tomorrow if you really want to know. So he couldn't sleep that night, the poor bloke, because he was one of these other art nut guys. He was excited. Not for what he knew, but what he thought he might find out. So sure enough, she did turn up, met the appointment. She told him what she knew, even gave her her name. And he said, oh, can you bring it in? Can I actually have it? And so they met up, went to her house, and they picked it up. And she agreed. She said, well, if it's been stolen, I guess it's not really mine. So, yeah, you can auction it. So I went to auction. and Sotheby's auctioned it. So how much do I get bid for that painting? $5. Is it $5? 500. 5. How much more do I get bid? Anything? 15 mil. You're a generous man. We need more like you. These were US dollars. It ended up being sold for $1.05 million. And you go, where's the value in that? I think that guy got ripped off. But it's got value because that is part of a huge collection. It's got value because of the signature written down the bottom. And it's got value because it was hand done by an important person. Whose signature is on you? We all have the signature, not an important person, but the one and only powerful God. There's a parable in Matthew 13. Why don't you turn there in Matthew 13 and see if I can find it as well. Matthew 13 verse 44. 44. You've got to be listening. That's just to make sure you're listening. Matthew 13:44. It actually starts in the Bible I'm reading here. Are you listening? Really listening? God's kingdom is like a treasure hidden in a field for years and then accidentally found by a trespasser. The finder is ecstatic. What a find! And he proceeds to sell everything he owns to raise money to buy that field. Or God's kingdom is like a jewel merchant on a hunt for excellent pearls. He finds one that is flawless and immediately he sells everything and buys it. How much did he sell to buy that pearl? Everything. He took a risk. He risked everything he had for one pearl. He risked it all. In Luke 15, there are some more parables or stories. I want to read two of them for now. Luke 15 verse 4. And I know this is mainly cattle country down here, but it's also sheep country. We're all like sheep. But Luke 15 verse 4. Suppose you had 100 sheep and lost just one. Wouldn't you leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the lost one until you found it? When found, you can be sure you would put it across your shoulders, rejoicing. And when you got home, call your friends and neighbours. Celebrate with me. I found my lost sheep. Count on it. There's more joy in heaven over one sinner's rescued life than over 99 good people in no need of rescue. Can you relate to that? You've got a group of, be it sheep, cattle, animals, your family. One's gone walkabout and you don't know where, but you go out looking. I've got a friend back home, or an acquaintance maybe, he's a friend. His son went off the rails a bit, and he recounts times he was out on the streets in the dark of the morning, the wee of the morning, wee hours, looking, searching up and down, and he rescued his son a few times. You know, he left his family safe at home, went looking for his lost son. That's what it's like for God. In a way, earth is his lost planet, and he's working to save us, to bring us back home. You know, how much did that farmer risk? Was it a risk leaving those 99 behind? Did he lock them up in a pen, in a shed, safe and sound, and put a guy in charge and say, keep these guys watch? In the scripture I've read here, it just says he left them in the wilderness and went to go after the lost one. We could surmise and make up stories about those who were the 99, but for now I want to think about the lost one, because we are part of that lost. I want to skip down now to verse 11. And this is the greatest story in the Bible in so many ways. And we've all read it, I'm sure. If we haven't read it, we've heard it. But we're going to hear it again. And we'll just think about something as we go through. Verse 11, the story of the lost son. And then Jesus said, there was once a man who had 2 sons. The younger said to his father, Father, I want right now what's coming to me. Do you reckon he said, please? He might have. It's not recorded though. So the father divided the property between them. It wasn't long before the younger son packed his bags and left for a distant country. There, undisciplined and dissipated, he wasted everything he had. After he'd gone through all his money, there was a bad famine all through that country, and he began to hurt. You know what it's like when you haven't eaten for a long time and you get that hurt? I'm sure that's just a part of the hurt he had. He also had hurt from where he was compared to where he'd been. He signed on with a citizen there who assigned him to his fields to slop the pigs. He was so hungry he would have eaten the corn cobs in the pig slop, but no one would give him any. Now that brought him to his senses. He said, all those farmhands working for my father sit down to 3 meals a day, and here I am, starving to death. I'm going back to my father. I'll say to him, Father, I've sinned against God. I've sinned before you. I don't deserve to be called your son. Take me on as a hired hand. He got right up and went home to his father. When he was still a long way off, his father saw him. His heart pounded. He ran out, embracing him, and kissed him. The son started his speech. Father, I've sinned against God. I've sinned against you. I don't deserve to be called your son ever again. But the father wasn't listening. He was calling to his servants. Quick, bring a clean set of clothes and dress him. Put the family ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Then get a grain-fed heifer and roast it. We're going to have a feast. We're going to have a wonderful time. My son is here, given up for dead and now alive, given up for lost and now found. And they began to have a wonderful time. Can you imagine that in your own family? Someone who had disappeared and they were lost, and each day you're thinking about them. Each day it's going through your mind. Where are they? You're going out down the street and wondering, will I find them? And there's a story of a guy, he better remain nameless, but he rang me up one day. He was a patient I had, and he rang up and he said, that person you had working for you, tell me again, what's the name? And I told him. And I thought, he says, you sure? And I said, yeah. Like, it was pretty obvious, I know the name. Are you sure? I said, yeah. Oh, okay. And you hung up. And I was actually now getting worried, thinking, there's something happened to her? But he rang me back and he told me the story. Basically, he was looking for his birth mother. And he'd been looking for about 5 years maybe. He was an adult grown man, older than I am now, and he only found out he was adopted when he was in his 50s. And he started the hunt. He was out looking. And when he found her, he was excited. I'd never actually heard him excited before like that. But he was excited because he'd found what he'd been looking for. And his search resulted in a find. Sorry, that doesn't explain the full story, but the person who worked for me was related to his birth mother through a long interconnected chain, and that's why he was excited because of that. Sorry, I thought I'd better fill that story in. But the notion of something you've lost and found. Sometimes I put things away because I want to keep it safe. And lots of people do that as well, it seems. But when you find them after lots of looking, what's that feel like? It's often something pretty insignificant in terms of monetary value, but when you put it away because you've lost it and you found it, it's exciting. You know, back to the lost son. We often focus on the father and talk about how he was running in his robes, something a Jewish father just didn't do. We focus on the son. He was a bit of a deadhead guy if he went out and squandered everything he had in such a short time. And we relate ourselves to that. But think again about the father. If you were the father and your sons came to you and said, you're going to die one day, we all know that. Why don't you just divide the stuff up now and, I'll have my half now, and the other son, he can have his half? Do you think you as a father would have a clue about what that son was going to do with it? You know your kids. You may not be able to put it in words how you know them, but you have a fair idea of the sort of things they like to do, how they like to spend their time. Do you think that father knew his son enough to know what was going to happen? I mean, he didn't tell him, go out and spend it on this and that. And I'm sure he may not have said to him, but he probably, the younger son, would have known what his father would have liked. But he knew his son enough to take the risk of saying to him, that's yours, I'll take the risk, I'll trust you with it. 3/4 in the back of his mind, I reckon he thought, it's not going to last that long and he'll be back. Or maybe he won't be back. God took a risk in creating this earth. But he took the risk of freedom. That's essentially what the risk was. It wasn't making us or making Adam or Eve. The risk was that he created us with choice. And we have freedom. We have the value of choice, or the possibility of choice. And he took the risk to let us choose. You know, we take risks every day. Some of us take more than others, I must admit. I'm not known as a risk taker, but we'll see if that changes. You know, you may have seen this book by Ben Carson, Taking the Risk. If you need to read something, it's valuable, it's worth the read. But he comments on when you get up in the morning, what risk do you take to get out of bed every morning? You know, if you're like me and like to stay there a bit longer, you could think about this. In the US, hundreds of people die in their bathtub every year. Are you going to not have a bath? 53% of Americans get their tap water from underground aquifers which are polluted. They don't know about it, but it is. And it's polluted with poison, not just dirty stuff, it's fair income poison out of storage tanks. Ever thought about once you're finished in the bathroom and you get out, you should be warned that just getting dressed is more dangerous than most people ever suspect. 150,000 Americans are seriously injured by their clothing every year. And more than 100,000 Americans get rushed to emergency when their shoes or their shoelaces fail to perform as they're designed. You're going to stop wearing clothes or shoes just because there's a risk you might get injured? And for those of you who drink coffee, well, that's for all of us actually, if you feel the need for a little extra fortification to jumpstart your day, you might not want to know that there are more than 1,000 different chemicals in roast coffee. And only 26 have been tested for carcinogenicity, to become cancer-causing agents. And of those 26 tested, 19 caused cancer in rats. In fact, some experts calculate there are more carcinogens in 1 cup of coffee than in the total amount of pesticide residues ingested by the average person in a year. So that's just what some people are saying. So before you decide what to eat with your breakfast coffee, you probably shouldn't think too much about the recent report from the Science Academy there. It said it's plausible that naturally occurring chemicals present in food pose a greater cancer risk to synthetic chemicals. You know, there are chances that simple things we do cause a problem. You know, crossing the road is a risk. There are people every year in Australia killed and maimed by crossing the road. Driving the car. You know, I don't tell many people this, but when I come on a long trip like down here from home, I did think about how many people do die in a car accident over Easter. And across the country it's at least 20, isn't it, often? You know, I'm on the road, why might it not be me? Or you, for that matter? It might be a small number, but it's a risk. Did it stop me coming? Well, I'm here. But there's a risk out there. Or riding a bike, a push bike. I actually considered bringing my bike with me, but didn't tell anyone because they'd all laugh at me. But, you know, I love riding a push bike. It carries a risk. And in fact, this last week just gone, I went to a funeral back home. A guy who, I'll tell you his name, Graham Allen. He's a guy who's done stacks for lots of people, both on a one-to-one level with his money he's been able to earn. He's been a God-fearing man, done things out in the islands. He's a Rotarian. He's a guy who's larger than life. He was described in all these positive ways. They also said he was blunt. And he was, but he was a great bloke. And he died on a push bike. And I was actually on my way home myself on a bike when my wife got the call last Sunday. And you go, do I get back on the bike or not? I'm sure Graham would have said, hop back on. So I did. But you know, all these things in life carry a risk. Going fishing. That's for you, Peachy. You know, you hear about these guys out in their little fishing boats. They go out and never come home. In fact, down in South Australia this last week, yesterday, or was it Thursday, 2 fishermen went out and only 1 came home. Or going surfing. Seems to be every second week someone's getting bitten by a shark. It's often in West Australia, mind you, but it happens on this side as well. You know, how many Australians still go in the water? Or for that matter, even using a stove. I was reading this book, the amount of injuries from cooking. You know, it's crazy. Should you stop cooking? Raw food, here we come. You know, I was involved in Pathfinders a bit, I still am for that matter, and went with one of the guys out kayaking. Now, I'm no great muscle man, that's why I've got long sleeves on. But we just did this real short run, literally from probably the front of the block of the church to the back of the church, through some white water. It looked like fun to me. And the guy said, well, hop in. He put me in, strapped me, like, for those who don't know, you actually hop in the thing, there's a skirt that goes around your waist and around the boat, and so water won't get in. And, yeah, okay, here's your paddle, off you go, and he gave me a shove. And his wife calls out, she says, if you get tipped over, just pull on that thing in front of you. I had a look in there, sure enough, there was a little strap there. I thought, okay, whatever. And within 5 seconds, I was upside down, going, where is that thing? And here I pulled on it and I popped back up. And then I went again. And I've been a few more times since. But there was a risk of not coming back up. mean, I had a friend at college when I went there. He died in white water. He was a very strong swimmer, and he and his mate went out. He never came back. They never found his body even. You know, there are risks in life that we take, and you go, well, why do you do it? You do lots of safety things. I might add, the guy I went out with, he was known, well, went out on a longer kayak with, he was known as Mr. No Risk. And so I trusted both him and his helpers to get me out of trouble every time I went upside down. And I lost count how many times I went, but they rescued me every time. You know, think of abseiling. How many here have been abseiling? Oh, everyone. Was it easy or scary? How many found it scary? So you go, why do you bother jumping off a cliff backwards if it's so scary? Because it is. You know, I went out abseiling with these 10 and 11, 12-year-olds once, and there were these two girls in particular who, it was kids, like they were 12 and they were going, this is too, like, you know, it's a bit boring. And they were actually becoming a bit mischief maker sort of kids. And so the leader guy said, well, come with me. He says, we're going to go face first. And, you know, we rig up different. We're going to go right behind and down that way. And I saw them do it, and they went flying down. And I thought, 12-year-old girls can do that. I better do that too. And so I did. But mind you, there was another guy with me. I think we agreed, if I go, you'll go sort of deal. And we had to wait because I don't know why, there's some issue, we had to wait for a while. We were there standing looking down, goodness knows how many metres. And he actually said to me, he said, I'm out of here. But the thrill of doing those things that are risky, we do them. Why do we take risk? Why did God take risk? You know, I've never done real fair dinkum rock climbing, it's just too hard. Going down's okay, going up's too hard. But I ever thought of climbing Mount Everest? I don't think of it that often, but every so often I think of it. And I think, why do these guys do it? Some would say, because it's there. Some say, well, they're just stupid. Is that what you said? But there's a reason they do it. I'm not quite sure what the reason is, but they take a risk to do what they've set their sight on. I was looking up how many people have climbed it, and I've forgotten what I read now. But what I did read was that currently, of those who go up, 5% don't come home. You know, it's 5% have a go and don't make it. Is that worth the risk? To us, it's obviously not. But to these guys, it obviously is. You know, you might know that guy Lincoln Hall. Does that name ring a bell? Lincoln Hall was the Australian climber who went up and didn't come home. Well, they thought he wasn't coming home, but after his mates came back, he, stumbled, had cerebral edema, lost his mind, and they figured, we've got to leave him here. And that is the agreed thing to do amongst climbers. And so they left him there to die, and they were planning his funeral, essentially. And he turned up 2 days later, alive and well. Well, almost well. His fingers were missing. And you go, you know, you ask him, I didn't get to meet him, but someone who did, so, you know, ask him, why'd you do it? Would you do it again? He has no regrets whatsoever. He'd do it again. The risk was worth it for him because he took value in what he did. You know, what possessed God to take the risk to send his son to earth? To send his only son. Come to Revelation 12. Revelation 12 and verse 7. War broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but they were no match for Michael. They were cleared out of heaven, not a sign of them left. The great dragon, that ancient serpent, the one called Devil and Satan, the one who led the whole earth astray, thrown out, and all his angels thrown out with him, thrown down to earth. You know, we tend to think love began in heaven, and I'm sure it did. But war began there as well. It's a bit of a, you go, how does that work? But it tells us there, war broke out in heaven. Because Lucifer, the great dragon, had decided that he was more important than Michael, than Jesus. He put himself up and decided, I'll take God on. And he was therefore had to be banished from heaven. But there was some good news amongst it. In Genesis 3:15, you'll know that verse. You may know it. I'll read it from this Bible here. Just go back a couple of verses. Because you've done this, you're cursed. So this was when Eve was deceived, Adam was deceived, and the serpent seduced Eve and she ate the fruit. God told the serpent, because you've done this, you're cursed. Cursed beyond all cattle and wild animals. Cursed to slink on your belly and eat dirt all your life. I'm declaring war between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. She'll wound your head, and you'll wound her heel. You know, there was a price to pay for all that war, if you like. Even though God set a plan in motion to restore us back to the original plan, there were consequences. I mean, we all know there are consequences. Sometimes we'd like to forget about them, but there was a price to pay. You know, there's pain we have to put up with these days. Hard work. You know, but God loved, and through all the generations he's shown his love. Think of Noah. He didn't just love Noah, he loved everyone out there, and he asked Noah to do a job. Think of Abraham. God loved Abraham, and he asked Abraham to do a job. Isaac, Jacob, David. Then they're all the prophets. God gave them each a job to do. You know, God loved and he longed. He longed to build a connection between us and himself. He longed to relate with us and for us to relate back to him. And he still longs to meet with us and talk to us. How much did God love? In John 3:16 we read it, God loved so much that he gave one of his sons, his only, his one and only. He gave it all. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his son, his one and his only son. And this is why, so that no one need be destroyed. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and lasting life. You know, God paid the ultimate price. Yes, there are things that we may not like here on earth, and things that are uncomfortable, painful, in many ways more than one. But God gave all so that we could be restored to him.
So for those who are familiar with it, lift up your voices.
Lord, as we stop now at the end of this time, we thank you that you've been able to remind us of your infinite love. We may not be worthy, but you come to pay the price, and we thank you for that. As we go from here this week ahead, we ask that we'll be able to be a witness for you, a witness of your love, and that one day we'll be able to meet you in heaven with many people who we have known from here from earth. So we leave ourselves with you now, asking that you'll take us and use us as you see fit this week, for your sake. Amen.